Let's talk a little bit about waterborne drying equipment. What's the right solution for me? What's going to get me to be able to utilize waterborne and get all and be as productive as I want to be with it? And this is probably one of the areas that there's the most frequently asked questions. There's a lot of misconception around it, and there's frankly just a lot of indecision about what I should do, because everybody's heard something. Everybody's heard that, look, you don't need to do anything to convert to waterborne. Just let's throw it in, let's get it done, and this product, it's amazing how well this product dries. And then you run into people that have also heard, well, you know what, you need to spend thousands of dollars. And then you hear, you know what, you don't really need to do too much to your booth, maybe a little portable unit. You know, what is the right solution? What's the right thing for my shop? What do I need to do? Tell me, Herb, please. Tell me what I need to do. Well, how I can answer that is more around what's the process to make that decision. What should you do to make the right decision for your shop? And it really starts with this bullet point actually is about the fact that picking the right solution will unlock those opportunities we talked about earlier. So, you know, just picking any solution is not the right thing to do here. Really study it, really think about it, really think about what you want to get out of waterborne conversion. What's important to you out of waterborne conversion? And when you make the right decision, I'm telling you, it unlocks all kinds of opportunity for production enhancement and productivity through your shop. So what's the steps, Herb? How do I make the right decision? How do I make the right choice? What's the right thing for me to do here? And it's really about a step program, in my opinion. And the first step is really about understanding how waterborne flashes and what influences it. What makes that thing dry? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Step 2 is really about understanding the features, advantages, and benefits of solutions. What does this solution offer that solution doesn't? What does this solution do for me? How many cars can I get done with that solution? All those kind of things. We're going to talk about solutions. We're not going to necessarily talk about products specifically, but we'll talk about the solutions that are out there and available. Thirdly, we need to really take a look at key factors in your shop, because it's really an individual decision. It's not a decision that just can be just one broad brush decision based on what you should use. But it's really about understanding your shop, understanding how many cycles a day you expect to get out of your booth. What's that number for you? What's the opportunity to add cycles to your booth? Do you have additional capacity in your shop? Can you actually put more jobs through the booth if you had additional cars to do? What's your existing paint shop equipment like? What's your relative climate conditions? Are you in a humid area? Are you in California like we are, which is hot and dry most of the time? Or is your weather pretty tepid? What's those conditions? And then lastly, what's the value for productivity? What value do you place on that? Is that something that you highly value? Is that something you want to increase? Is that something that really drives your business? So those things we need to take a look at. We need to determine for your shop. And then we need to establish a return on investment for each piece of equipment or each type of solution relative to those other things. So it's really about making a decision that's right for you, and it really can be a decision that's based in dollars and cents, based in what's going to pay you back better for the amount of investment that you put in. But the one thing I clearly want everybody to understand, that one solution doesn't fit all. It's just not the right way to go. You really need to think about this thing a little bit more. So let's talk about how and what affects waterborne from drying. And if you look at my picture here, and if we take it from the bottom up, the bottom gray area is your panel. This wavy area is your waterborne base coat. And again, I go back to the point, if you've ever seen waterborne base coat when it's shot, it's very bumpy and rough looking. So that's kind of duplicating that. These are air molecules that are kind of hanging around right over the panel, traveling over the top of the panel, kind of sticking to that rough surface that is that waterborne film. And then on the top we have these little circles with arrows. That's actually replicating what your airflow in your spray booth would look like. That's the laminar air. That's the nice smooth air. Now, when you have this situation, what happens with waterborne is that we start to create this boundary layer. This boundary layer, which I have in blue, gets created because you've got that smooth air flowing And because you have air molecules that are now starting to mix with water molecules that are all kind of getting captured right in here, and you actually get to a point where you have these air molecules that are going to be stagnant. Now, why is that important? And why is knowing about a boundary layer important to know? Because that's important to know because the next step is evaporation. And the next step, evaporation, is illustrated here by those white molecules that we had in the previous slide. They're now blue. So now we got water evaporating up into right above the panel. And that boundary layer that's been developed because you have that smooth air running across the top of the panel is actually going to trap that and create like a vapor lock in that area. And what's going to happen, it's going to be kind of like a sponge. We've all wiped up a spill on our countertops before, and we get to that certain point where, okay, the sponge is not going to hold anymore. Now, it'll dry out eventually, and I could go back and wipe up some more, or you can do something about that water that's in there. But the idea here is that you get to a certain point where evaporation is going to slow and maybe even stop for a while until more evaporation can happen. So what you really have there is you have a situation where things have slowed down. Now, will it eventually dry? Absolutely. I mean, eventually this panel will dry, but it's going to take some time. So what do we do? What can we do to try to speed that up? What can we do to help ourselves in that situation? And what we can do, and what we do when we convert shops, is we add turbulent air. So these molecules now that have arrows and that they're coming down in this tumbling fashion. They're coming into the panel in a tumbling fashion is what we represent as turbulent air. And what happens when we have that turbulent air, what happens when that comes in, it actually breaks up the boundary layer, so it breaks up that layer that's trapping all that evaporation from happening, and then at the same time, it's driving low humid air down into the panel and down into these valleys. And what happens when that occurs is that now you've got the boundary layer gone, but you also have that low humid air actually going across the panel and drawing more of the water out. So you're, in essence, you're speeding up the process. You're dispersing all the blue molecules so that they can evaporate someplace. You're driving low humid air into the panel, drawing out more air. You're going to get a quicker flash time. So by delivering that air in that turbulent fashion, and then if we can increase the heat of that air a little bit, now you really have something that's going to equalize humidity. So if you have humid days here in Wisconsin, which I'm sure you do, and that's usually the questions that I get asked a lot about. What can I do to help myself on humid days? Well, it's optimize that turbulence. It's optimize that turbulence. Now, again, the other thing I also get is everybody's like, well, Herb, you're starting to talk about turbulence in a spray booth. That's going to create dust. That's going to create problems within my booth. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that later. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that we're talking about tumbling in the air. We're not talking about these high pressure, high flow, tsunami type winds that are going to be blowing in your spray booth. We're talking about sending airflow in a different direction, crashing it together so that we have a nice tumbling turbulence that's right over the panel to take care of these issues that are created because we're using Waterborne. Now, when you do that, are you going to kick a little bit of dust up? Yes. And we're going to ask you to do a little bit better job of maintaining your spray booth. But we're not talking about having a sterile environment by any means. And when you start thinking about it and when you see one actually work, you'll understand that you don't get a lot of dust and dirt and trash flowing all over the place. But again, the better that we optimize turbulence and the better job we can get that done, and you can get that done in a couple of different ways, but the more we optimize that, the lower we're going to decrease the time it's going to take to get a cycle out, and we're going to add cycles per day. So what are the solutions? How do we get this done? How do we dry Waterborne? What are some of the solutions? Well, let's first talk about your regular spray booth, because that is a question that gets asked a lot. Do I have to do anything? Will Waterborne dry in my spray booth? Well, I'll tell you the end of the story. The end of the story is yes, it will. But really, if you think about what a spray booth was really designed for, it was really designed for basically a safe place to spray paint, a place that you can collect the overspray of a paint job. And really, it's a place that you could also bake your finish. So really, when you think about what a spray booth was designed for, it was really all about the refinish process. It had nothing to do with waterborne, had nothing to do with flashing off waterborne. Now, and because of that, you get that stagnant layer of air that's going to be over the top of the booth, and you're going to get that vapor lock. So we're back to that blue line that's over the car. If you can see that blue line, that's the same blue line that I showed in the cutaway version of the side of a panel. And so in the booth, you're going to have that situation again. You're just going to have that situation where you're going to not have the most optimal conditions for flashing off waterborne. But at the end of the day, we're going to tell you that if you want to get 1 cycle, maybe 2 cycles out of your spray booth, you probably can get it done with your booth the way it is today. Not going to be the optimal way to go, but you can get it done. So if your goal is to get 1 job a day or 2 jobs a day out, you can actually stay with what you got and you'll be just fine. The next solution is really about a compressed air solution. And if you haven't had a chance to see these are called air diffusers. There's a stand here that's representing holding 2 diffusers. And what is an air diffuser? How does it really work? What it is a gun that takes in inlet air pressure from your compressor and amplifies that by 7 times. And because it's on a stand or because it's being held in your painter's hand, it can be directed towards the panel that you want to have flashed. And what happens with that is, again, it's creating turbulence because it's coming from a different direction. It's crashing into your airflow that's coming over the car from your booth, and it's creating the turbulence in a localized situation. So if you've painted a fender and if you've painted a hood and maybe blended into a door, you could arrange a stand that probably had 2 or 3 of these air diffusers on them, and you could direct it towards the car and be able to get that airflow to crash across that car so that you can get enough turbulence to get waterborne actually evaporating the way we want it to and quickly. So again, it's a localized situation. You have to position the stands or you have to hold it. Now, in most people's minds, this is the more affordable way to go. It's the inexpensive way to go if you want to change to waterborne. I would agree with you in most cases. But the thing you really have to think about that when you start talking about it, is it the inexpensive way to go? Is about creating, is about the amount of CFM that these guns actually use. One of these guns uses anywhere between 5 and 14 CFM per gun, and it really depends on where the painter sets it. And in my experience, if a painter thinks that a little's good, a lot's going to be even better. So he's going to turn it up. He's going to have it up as high as he can go. Now, I will tell you that these equipment manufacturers are driving that CFM rating as low as they can go because they're aware that there's some issues revolved around having enough air to run these guns. But if you take on and you consider this scenario, you've got a gun that's going to take 5 to 14. So let's say 10 CFM. And you're going to run 2 or 3 of those. That's 20 to 30 CFM. Now, if you take a look at what 1 horsepower of your compressor creates in CFM, it's 4. So you start doing the math. Let's say we have 3 of those at 10, that's 30. Well, now you've just eaten up 7 horsepower of your compressor. Now, if you're well set up and you've got a big screw compressor and you've got 30 horsepower, you've got you got 2 compressors, 2 20 horsepower compressors running in tandem. I mean, I've seen a lot of shops that are well equipped and can make this work well. The thing you just have to think about is, do I have everything I need to make this solution work for me? Because if I don't, now I'm starting to talk about a compressor. Now I'm thinking about, now I need to put a dedicated compressor in my paint shop. I'll tell you, when we first got started in Waterborne, I really, being the salesperson and being a marketing kind of a guy, I'm thinking of things that we can sell. And I thought, hey, this is great. One of the first things we're going to put together is this package of a couple of diffusers, a stand, and a little teeny compressor. And I start pitching this idea to people, and this is where I actually learned my lesson on this idea, was, well, how big a compressor do you think you're going to need for that? Oh, a little teeny thing, a little portable. Pancake probably, that's all you'll need. Well, when you start doing the math, for a couple of those guns, I would have needed a 7 horsepower or an 8 or a 10 horsepower compressor basically to run those couple 2 or 3 guns. So again, if you're properly set up with compressors, it's a great solution. But the other thing you need to consider, because one of the things I talked about earlier, one of the opportunities around Waterborne is about productivity enhancement. Well, is it the most efficient use of your painter's time? Moving the stands around, having more than one stand in the booth, actually standing there. You know what, it's a small little job. I'll just stand here and I'll just hold the gun and I'll dry it off myself. Hey, it's a great solution. It works. 3 to 5 minutes, stand there, flash off that little job, and then clear coat it, and he's done. The only problem is that those 3 to 5 minutes, or maybe even 10 minutes, because maybe he got talking to the helper and he just stood there for 10 minutes, are time that they could be doing something else. So again, it's real evaluation of what's the right solution. Our opinion, if you want 4 cycles or less a day out of your spray booth, it's a great solution. And if you have enough compressor capacity, it's a great solution. But again, 4 cycles. Now, I'll tell you that we have shops in California, we have shops outside of California that probably get more than 4 cycles a day out of this solution. But it's probably the exception, not the rule. But it's again, if you're properly set up and you've got the proper compressor capacity to use this tool, it's a great way to go. The next solution would be what we consider a mechanical or a retrofitted system. And when we start talking about retrofitted, we're starting to talk about something that's installed in your booth. It's permanent in your booth. It's a solution that's going to be in there all the time. It's going to have a control panel perhaps, but it's certainly going to have an on and off switch. But in this representation, this drawing here, we're showing that this particular retrofit is actually a tower system in corners. And the idea here, in our opinion, is that a nozzle-based system will provide you will optimize the amount of turbulence that you'll create in a booth. It optimizes it because you have towers that are permanently fixed in the shop in the booth, and you actually can completely cover the car in turbulence. Now it's not just about localized. It's not a localized solution necessarily. Now we're talking about something that will actually develop this tumbling air all the way around the car. Not just related to one spot in the car, but all the way around the car, so you get good coverage. Now, they do work off a separate fan. They don't rely on compressed air. So where you see the circles, and the pictures aren't as clear on these screens, but those are actual fans that are set up to run these systems. This particular system is up on top. It's taking air out of the plenum. In this particular system, it's actually taking it out of the cabin. But the idea here is that it has its own airflow. It creates its own airflow. It's not reliant on your compressor capacity. Flexibility in design and cost. These units have come a long way from the day that they were shown to us in California when we started looking into what would be the right thing for shops. And today, if you want two towers, you can have 2 towers. You want 4 towers, we can get you 4 towers. You want 6 towers, we get you 6 towers. You want towers that have lights in them, we got towers that got lights in them. If you want towers in the corners, we put towers in the corners. If you want towers in the mid-wall, we put towers in the mid-wall. You want towers along the roof or along the hip because you want to be able to shoot down on the car, and maybe your light situation in your booth is in a manner that you can't really be in the corners. We've got that design flexibility. A lot of opportunity to provide you the optimal amount of turbulence in your booth, no matter what that is. Whether it can get done with 2, whether it can get done with 4, whatever it takes. Now we have systems that are available that will allow you to do that. And not only in design, but in cost as well. So if you're in a situation where you have X number of dollars that you can spend on a Waterborne retrofit, and that fits into having 2 units, or that fits into having 4 units, that's what we can put in for you. The idea here is there's flexibility wrapped around this solution now. And it's not just about putting something in the corners and taking care of the turbulence that way. The other thing you get is in some of the units, again, it's about design of your particular unit. You can have a control panel, or you can just have an off and on switch if that's all you think you need for your particular solution. But the control panel is a nice thing because you can program it to be able to help optimize your throughput. And what I mean by that is that if we determine that your flash times set up in your booth are going to be about 3 minutes or maybe 4 minutes, we can actually set the system up so that in 3 minutes or in 4 minutes, the system goes off. Painter pushes the button, doors open, fans go on, doors, whether you have doors or not, doesn't, it depends on the system you're with. But the idea here is that you have the opportunity to actually have the system shut down in the 3 minutes that it should take to flash. Now, we're going to ask the painter to go and look and make sure that the job did get flashed off properly. But if we do a good job and we set it up right in the first place, now you've got a system that basically tells the painter when he should go back in and either put the next coat on or actually go in and do some clear coating. Humidity buster. In our opinion, in my opinion especially, this system is the best for equalizing humidity. This system is the best for creating the right climate for any climate that you might have throughout the day, because not only are you going to deliver the most optimal turbulence to the car, you can also heat that turbulence as well. So if you have the opportunity to be able to increase heat at the same time as driving turbulence, now you've got the best case scenario for offsetting humidity, your relative humidity during the day. Before, it's just about increasing heat and a little bit of airflow, but with this system you have both. Towers during the bake cycle, as you saw, those towers are set up. They can run during the bake cycle, and what that gives you is a shorter bake cycle. If you see down below in the efficiencies, you can decrease your bake cycle by 50%. Now we're talking some real cycle time. Now we're talking some real energy cost savings. Now we're talking more than just getting cars through. Now we're talking about saving some other costs. And now that opportunity, again, those opportunities we talked about earlier, the opportunity to be more productive, the opportunity to be more profitable. Now you start seeing how all these things tend to work together to make Waterborne an opportunity rather than just something you should do. And enjoy those efficiencies. Our opinion, if you want to get 5 cycles or more a day done out of your spray booth, you need to consider something in your booth that's going to be retrofitted, something that's permanently fitted. All right, so we've learned a little bit about how Waterborne flashes and what influences that. And we've talked about some of the features and advantages of a couple of different solutions. Now we need to identify those key factors in your shop. Go back to that list that we talked about earlier. What are some of the things that we want to talk about? Number of cycles, additional capacity that you have. All those things now we need to take a look at. We add all those things up and we get to step 4, which is a return on investment. A true dollar value of what each piece of equipment could deliver back to you over time. And what is ROI? Because ROI really is different to everybody. Return on investment is really a different thing for everybody. But in every case, we can put a dollar value on that. If you're talking about increasing boost cycles and enhancing your productivity, one of the opportunities that we talked about earlier about Waterborne, we can actually put a dollar value based on which piece of equipment you decide. If we pick this particular piece of equipment, it'll equal 1 extra cycle a day. And then start doing the math about 1 extra cycle a day versus the cost of that particular piece of equipment. Then you can determine how much payback you're going to get, how quickly you'll pay back that piece of equipment, and then on how quickly are you're going to start realizing additional profit in your shop. Cost and energy savings. Now this might be something that's just separate. You might just, that's all I want, Herb. I just want to get some cost and energy savings on my solution. In some cases, it's all 3. But again, it's back to what's right for your shop. What are you looking for in your Waterborne conversion? Maintaining productivity without stress. We have a few shops that, look, Herb, we are absolutely to the wall every day. We get 7 cars or 8 cars a day done, but it's so stressful. And if one thing goes wrong, if I have one mishap or misstep, I've lost that 7 or 8. Now I'm down to 5, and that's really a problem for me. So I just want to have a little comfort. So I want to pick a solution. I'm going to convert to Waterborne because I can be more productive, and I'm going to pick a solution that's going to help me be a little less stressful during the day. So that's fine. We can put a dollar value on that as well. Or it might just be an opportunity to change to Waterborne. I just want to get in the game. I just want to be able to use Waterborne. I want to be able to say that I want to be able to market green. So I just want to get in the game. So just get me, might be the bare minimum. Just get me in the game. Whatever it might be, matching up the right ROI for your shop with the right piece of equipment that maximizes the dollar amount that's going to come back to you. That's what this decision's about. So if we go jump back to the beginning and when we talked about one solution doesn't fit every situation, that's why. All we want to do is try to help you make that decision. And it's our opinion that at FinishMaster we have that experience. And we're well equipped to be able to help you do that. We're well equipped to be able to take a look at what's going to be the best thing for you and be able to put that dollar value on it so you can make the right decision that'll help you unlock those opportunities that Waterborne has for you.